Today we're going to talk about something we all take for granted, and that's the availability of clean running water in your house. We're used to that. Back in the 1800s in Galveston, they did not have municipal water systems. Even though cities in the 1850s started having municipal water, Galveston was very late to the game in that, mainly because they didn't have the supply of clean water. The technology was here, but this is an island that sits close to sea level. Any well you drilled here would be brackish or salty. So it was not until almost the 1900s that they found water 18 miles inland in the Alta Loma Aquifer and were able to start drilling wells and bring it to the island. So this house was built kind of on the cusp of municipal water. Pipes were starting to be laid in 1892. That's when this house was designed and construction began. So how they managed that transition, what they did in this house, that's what we're going to talk about today.
Prior to 1893, every house or business on Galveston Island had to collect rainwater. It could be as simple as using an old barrel to something much more elaborate. I love sitting here on the front porch and looking at the amazing house across the street. It's the Adriant Springer House, designed by Ellis Green and built in 1914. The house mixes styles such as these huge Doric columns that support a craftsman-style gable, but one of the most interesting features can only be seen if you walk down the alley behind the house. This house has one of the few remaining fully intact above-ground brick and wooden cisterns. My guess is that the cistern belonged to the original house that sat on this property, because by 1914 cisterns were no longer needed. Evidence of these above-ground cisterns are all over the island if you pay attention. Here are the partial remains of a cistern which was turned into an outdoor shower. You can also see from the Sanborn maps that large above-ground cisterns dotted the city. The R.R. Company at 21st and I had a cistern that held 55,000 gallons of water. Brick cisterns were also built partially or entirely underground, and they wouldn't necessarily show up on the Sanborn map. In some cases, multiple houses shared a cistern. The water collected in these cisterns was not very clean, and waterborne disease was a big problem down here.
Okay, we just found in the cabinets a cool thing that says, unfit to drink. So that was probably on a sink somewhere, since they had water from the cistern. You had to boil it before you drank it, so the water was just for bathing. Put it in my goodie drawer.
Galveston tried as early as 1882 to establish a public water system, but it was mostly saltwater fire hydrants, and they didn't work very well. In November 1885, a devastating fire destroyed an estimated 500 houses over 40 blocks at the center of the city, and it was clear that the existing waterworks were insufficient to meet the city fire protection needs, much less drinking water. The fire actually burned from the harbor all the way to the beach, roughly between 16th and 19th Streets, as shown on this map. The League House is marked by the red X. Fortunately, it wasn't built yet. The fire was such a disaster that a song was even written about it. The first verse starts out, "It was on a Friday morn, about the hour of 1. The fiery flames our Galveston did claim. Our firemen promptly came to see what could be done, and with hopeful hearts the flames did try to maim. But the hydrants would not work, and water hard to reach. 'Twas a horrid sight for those who were living near the beach, to see the town a-burning piece by piece." Help and donations came in from across the nation, but it was clear that something had to be done to provide a reliable water system. After tapping into the Alta Loma Aquifer in 1892, Galveston began laying pipe in earnest to bring fresh water from the mainland, and by 1894 the water demand was 1.5 million gallons every 24 hours. Shifting back to the League House, it was built at a point in time where modern conveniences such as electricity and indoor plumbing were just starting to reach the masses. In America, the chain pull indoor toilet was introduced in homes of the wealthy and in hotels in the 1890s, and Galveston had the first electric power plant in Texas. This house was built during a very transitional phase where only the very wealthy were able to benefit from these new technologies. And J.C. League certainly wasn't shy about using his wealth to make this house a modern masterpiece.
We're up in the third floor attic looking at the first part of the freshwater system of this house. Come in closer and take a look. This is a copper lined tub. It's basically 3.5 feet wide, 3 feet tall, and 9 feet long. The whole thing, very heavy lid. The whole thing's lined with copper, watertight. Water would fill from the top, and in the back there's a float switch. It would have had a float like kind of in your toilet today, that as the water rose, it lifted that and actually actuated a cutoff switch that's out here that would stop the pump from running so that water never overflowed. It's also got a neat, I just noticed it, I'm going to show you, a screen on it. I don't know why, but obviously it needed air and they wanted to keep bugs and rodents out. When full, this would have about 700 gallons of water in it, and that 700 gallons would weigh about 5,800 pounds or more. That's a lot of weight sitting on this floor. And the weight is necessary, the size is necessary, not just because of the water needs of the house, but to build water pressure in the lines. That weight is what works with gravity to push water down. It has to get down to the first floor where they had a hot water heater next to the stove, probably gas. It would get to that hot water heater and then have to be pushed back up to the second floor bathroom to have hot running water. So physics at work. I think it's pretty cool. We're still in the third floor attic, just in a different room. Right on the other side of this wall is that tank we were looking at. And since gravity only works going down, they needed a way to get water over into this work sink. So it had this really neat old pump that they would pump water into the sink. At some point when they got city water and had running water put in the house, they've added a spigot, but fortunately they left this pump and didn't take it out. So I think it's a really neat feature to have about the history of the house.
So now you know how water got to all the faucets in the house, but where did the water come from to fill the tank? Well, that was obvious. If you saw the I'm Going Down video debacle, you already know that this house has a massive cistern in the basement. Remember, the League house began construction in 1892, 1893, just as water supply pipes were being laid by the city. I would have thought that they would put in a modest above-ground cistern to collect drinking water, knowing that the city water would be available soon. But instead, this house seemed to go in the opposite direction. I finally got some good measurements of the cistern and calculated that it can hold 17,500 gallons of water. That's a lot of water to have under the house. Galveston already has a humid climate, and having all that evaporation come up and go through the house could really be a problem for climate control, mold, termites, etc. I decided the best thing to do would be to stop the water from going in the cistern and try to dry it out and then just leave it as part of the architectural history of the house. The house had an extensive gutter system that drained into underground pipes that filled the cistern. In the First Things First video, I talked about the removal of the gutters and all the work that was done initially. Unfortunately, even after all that work being done, the next time it rained, the cistern filled up to the very top. So water was still getting in somehow, even with the gutters gone. Okay. I did some more searching around the perimeter of the house and found some drain boxes that probably fed the cistern at some point. Oh dear. How deep is that? That's just...
It's not that deep.
Is it solid or is it mud? Just mud. Interesting. I just uncovered giant hole number 2 for today. No idea where this one goes. This may be the find of the day. I was raking and uncovered this. I'm not gonna take it off yet. I need a pry bar, but it looks like a great big hole down there. So we poured water into every hole we found to see if we could discover how water kept getting in. Okay, they're going to pour water in a hole I found outside. And see if it comes out here.
Is it coming? No.
No, nothing happened.
We throw a half of the bucket.
Okay, I think I know where another hole is. We plugged all the pipes we could find with concrete and eventually got to the point where it didn't fill up to the top, but it would get a couple of feet of water in it. After one heavy rain, we finally found a small crack where water was seeping in. Basically, the cistern had failed, so it was no longer watertight. But then I had a new question. Where was the water seeping in from? Okay, that's got to be groundwater.
Mm-hmm.
So we hit the water table. To find out where it's coming from, let's go back to the very end of the basement tour video.
In the basement tour video, I left you with the mystery in the basement, and that was this odd depression in the floor. And in that depression, I could see that there was, at one time, a shaft of bricks. You can see the faint outline of the bricks that have been concreted over, and again, a brick floor. So my thought was to do kind of the Geraldo Rivera reveal of Al Capone's safe and jackhammer through and discover something.
We're going down.
So Luciano got the jackhammer and jackhammered a while, and we made it about a half an inch through the concrete and gave up. It was really, really hard concrete. But later on, we did discover what's under here. We were digging for plumbing. Over in this area. And actually, as we dug down, we broke through the end of what turned out to be another older cistern, I think. If you hand me the camera, I can shine it through. And you can see that it's got an arched brick construction. And under where that shaft in, it's been filled in with rubble and concrete poured on top. So at some point they quit using this cistern and switched over to the new cisterns.
After spending a lot of time down in the cistern and pumping it out over and over and over again and watching the water move through the various little cracks, I finally concluded that neither cistern was watertight and that rainwater was no longer a problem. It was groundwater. So, after much soul searching, I came to the conclusion that the cisterns needed to go. And the top of the cistern was deteriorated and couldn't be trusted as a floor for the things that need to be done in the basement. And plumbing waste lines also needed to go right through the area where the cistern was located. Luciano loves to tear things up, so he took charge of the jackhammer and there was no turning back. The cistern was basically a big hole that needed to be filled, so we just let the bricks fall in. Okay, we have a new plan. Everything's going to come out. Everything you see is going to come out and get jackhammered and fill in the entire cistern. It had a big crack in this wall, so even though we pumped it out, groundwater is seeping in and keeping about a foot of water in it. We're going to retain the shaft here and not fill it, clean it out, concrete the bottom of it, and set it up as a sump to try to keep some of the excess water out from under the foundation. Everybody's got a tool.
flotar el escombro.
I always salvage anything I can, especially brick, but this brick broke as it was jackhammered. Mortar is always supposed to be softer than the brick so that the mortar will fail first and keep the bricks from cracking. But in this case, whoever built the arches used very hard mortar, so sadly most of the brick was destroyed during demolition. Getting the railroad track out was much harder. The longer pieces had to be cut in half so they could be moved. They were just so heavy. With the top gone, it was easy to see the layout of the cistern and really visualize just how big it was. And we do have caution tape around the hole. Based on how the drain pipes came into the floor, I suspected one additional cistern. After demoing out the floor above that area, we found nothing but sand. That made for a little bit less work. Then came the filling in of the hole. It'll take about 94 cubic yards of dirt and sand to fill the cistern. Lucky for me, I happen to have that lying around from another project that you haven't seen yet. We had to bring it in wheelbarrow by wheelbarrow. It's been a slow and tedious process, but we're getting there. Owning a house like this turns you into an archaeologist of sorts. Some things are obvious on the surface, but when you poke around, you uncover bits and pieces of information, and you start piecing together a more comprehensive picture of what actually went on. There's still a lot to do and a few more questions to ponder, such as why was there a depression in the floor over the mystery cistern? Why did the cisterns have different construction methods? Why did a 3-bedroom house need so much water? And why do I think the cisterns were built at different times? I'll save the answers for another time. This house needs a lot more work, and that costs money. If you've enjoyed watching, please consider going to our website, League-Kempner and making a donation. We're a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to restoring this amazing house. Another way to help is to just keep watching these videos, so be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single episode. Likes and comments help other old house enthusiasts like you find us on YouTube. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time here at the League-Kempner House in Galveston, Texas.